Admiral Sarah Chun stood at the large window of New Geneva Station, watching workers build another monument to peace. The metal structure would honor the friendship between humans and the Zephyrian collective. She held a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago while reading reports on her tablet. The reports told a different story than the pretty monument outside. 3 years had passed since the war ended. 3 years since humans and Zephyrians signed the Galactic Peace Accord of 2387. The galaxy celebrated the end of the bloodiest conflict in known history. Diplomats from dozens of species came to witness the signing ceremony. Everyone smiled and talked about a bright future. Chun remembered that day clearly. She had stood in her dress uniform, watching Ambassador Marcus Rivera shake hands with the Zephyrian delegation. The aliens looked pleased with themselves. Their leader, High Commander Zektar, spoke beautiful words about eternal peace and cooperation. The crowd cheered. The cameras recorded everything for history. But Chen knew something the crowds did not know. She knew about the intelligence reports coming from deep space. She knew about the secret drones that officially no longer existed. And she knew what those drones were seeing in Zephyrian space. Her tablet showed images captured just yesterday. A Zephyrian shipyard that was supposed to be building cargo vessels. Instead, the drones recorded massive warships under construction. Ships bigger than anything the Zephyrians had built during the actual war. Ships with weapon signatures that human sensors had never seen before. Chun touched her tablet screen and scrolled to another report. This one came from Captain Elena Vasquez, whose medical ship had been near a Zephyrian research station last week. The station was supposed to study peaceful uses of quantum energy. But Vasquez's hidden scanners detected something else entirely. The energy readings matched theoretical profiles for planet-killing weapons. A soft knock on her office door interrupted her thoughts. Ambassador Rivera walked in without waiting for permission. His usually perfect diplomatic smile was nowhere to be seen. The morning intelligence briefing was interesting, Rivera said, settling into a chair across from Chun's desk. The Zephyrians are not even trying to hide their preparations anymore. Chun set down her tablet and looked at her old friend. Rivera had been playing the role of naive diplomat for 3 years now. He attended peace celebrations, gave speeches about cooperation, and acted like he trusted every word the Zephyrians said. The performance was so convincing that even some humans believed it. How many shipyards are active now? Chun asked. 17 confirmed. Probably more than our drones haven't found yet. Rivera rubbed his tired eyes. Production has tripled since the treaty signing. They are building a fleet that could destroy every human world in a matter of weeks. Chun nodded. This was not news to her, but hearing the numbers still made her stomach tighten. The Zephyrians were preparing for war. They had always been preparing for war. The peace treaty had been a lie from the beginning. But here was the secret that the Zephyrians did not know. Humanity had also been lying from the beginning. Status report on our preparations? Chun asked. Rivera's tired expression changed to something that might have been a smile. Every human world is ready. The construction projects are complete. The civilian transports all carry their special cargo. And our exchange students are in position. Chun walked back to her window and looked out at the peace monument again. To anyone watching, it was exactly what it appeared to be. A symbol of friendship between former enemies. But Chun knew that beneath the monument's foundation lay enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. Every human world had similar monuments now. The Zephyrians had even helped pay for some of them. They thought humans were weak and sentimental, building pretty memorials instead of weapons. They were wrong about what humans were building. The Zephyrians still believe we are traumatized from the war, Rivera said, joining Chun at the window. They think we are so afraid of fighting again that we will accept any peace, even a temporary one. Good, Chun said. Let them keep believing that. The first human-Zephyrian war had been brutal. Human colonies burned. Millions died. Earth itself had come under attack. When the fighting ended, humanity looked beaten and desperate for peace. The galaxy saw humans as lucky survivors who had barely escaped extinction. What the galaxy did not understand was that humans learned from their defeats. They adapted. They prepared. And they never forgot. Chun opened another file on her tablet. This one showed production numbers from human industrial worlds. Officially, these facilities made farming equipment, civilian vehicles, and medical supplies. The numbers supported this story perfectly. Too perfectly for anyone to question them. But the farming equipment could be converted to military use in hours. The civilian vehicles carried hidden weapon systems. The medical supplies included biological countermeasures designed specifically to neutralize Zephyrian advantages. Dr. Liu's project is ahead of schedule, Rivera reported. His team has solved the physiological compatibility problem. If the Zephyrians try to use biological weapons against us again, they will get a very unpleasant surprise. Chun smiled for the first time all day. During the war, the Zephyrians had developed viruses that attacked human nervous systems. Thousands had died in agony before human doctors found treatments. Dr. Liu had spent 3 years making sure that would never happen again. But Liu had done more than create defenses. He had created weapons that would turn the Zephyrians' own biological advantages against them. The aliens' enhanced immune systems would become their weakness. Their rapid healing would become a curse. Liu was a gentle man who hated violence, but he understood what was at stake. When do you think they will make their move? Chun asked. Soon, Rivera answered. Their new weapons are almost ready. Intelligence suggests they are planning something for the 4th anniversary of the treaty. They'd probably think the timing will add insult to injury. Chun looked at the calendar on her tablet. The 4th anniversary was in 6 months. 6 months to complete their own preparations. 6 months to maintain the illusion that humanity trusted the peace. Outside her window, the monument construction continued. Workers installed a plaque with beautiful words about friendship and cooperation. Children from the station school watched and drew pictures of humans and Zephyrians. Working together, Chun felt a moment of sadness. She genuinely wished the peace could be real. Humans were not a species that enjoyed war. They preferred to build rather than destroy. They would have been happy to honor the treaty forever, but the Zephyrians had made their choice. They had chosen deception and preparation for war. They had mistaken human mercy for weakness and human desire for peace as naivety. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Rivera stood to leave. The next diplomatic function is tomorrow night. Another celebration of Zephyrian human friendship. Will you be able to keep smiling? Chun asked. I have been practicing for 3 years, Rivera said. I think I can manage one more performance. After he left, Chun returned to her reports. The numbers told the real story of the last 3 years. While the Zephyrians built weapons, humans had built something better. They had built a trap. Captain Elena Vasquez floated in the command center of the U.S. Nightingale, studying the readings from her ship's sensors. To anyone watching, her vessel was exactly what it appeared to be. A medical frigate carrying supplies to distant colonies. The red cross painted on its hull was real. The medical equipment in its cargo holds was functional and had saved many lives. But the Nightingale carried secrets that no medical ship should possess. Contact. Bearing 270, reported Lieutenant Torres from the sensor station. Zephyrian research vessel, just like the intelligence briefings described. Vasquez nodded and moved closer to Torres' station. The lieutenant was young but had proven herself during the war. Like everyone aboard the Nightingale, Torres knew their real mission had nothing to do with medicine. Range? Vasquez asked. 50,000 kilometers. They have not detected us yet. The Nightingale's stealth systems were humanity's greatest technological achievement since the war. The ship could float invisible in space, recording everything while appearing as nothing more than background radiation to enemy sensors. 80 months of testing had proven the technology worked perfectly against Zephyrian detection systems. Begin passive scan, Vasquez ordered. I want everything. Ship configuration, weapon signatures, communication frequencies, crew complement, everything. The Zephyrian vessel ahead was officially the science ship Harmony, dedicated to peaceful research into stellar phenomena. Its mission logs, filed with Galactic Council authorities, described studies of neutron star formation and cosmic radiation patterns, but Vasquez's sensors told a different story. The ship's hull showed signs of recent weapon installation. Its power signature matched military-grade reactors, not research equipment. And the cargo it carried included materials that had no peaceful scientific purpose. Captain, Torres said quietly, I am reading weapon-grade quantum distortion devices in their cargo hold. Vasquez felt her jaw tighten. Quantum distortion weapons had been outlawed by every civilized species decades ago. They could tear apart the fabric of space itself, making entire star systems uninhabitable. During the war, both sides had agreed never to use such weapons, no matter how desperate things became. Apparently, the Zephyrians no longer felt bound by that agreement. Document everything, Vasquez ordered. Full spectrum analysis. I want proof that will convince even the Galactic Council. While her crew worked, Vasquez thought about the last 18 months. The Nightingale had visited dozens of Zephyrian facilities. Everyone told the same story. The aliens were preparing for war on a scale that would make their previous conflict look like a minor disagreement. But they were not the only ones preparing. 3,000 light years away. Dr. James Liu worked in his laboratory on Mars. The facility's sign read, Agricultural Research Division, and that was not entirely false. Liu had indeed developed new farming techniques that would help terraform hostile worlds. His work would feed millions of colonists in the coming decades. But feeding colonists was not his primary concern anymore. Liu studied the data on his computer screen, comparing Zephyrian biological samples collected during the war with the genetic modifications his team had developed. The aliens' enhanced immune systems had made them nearly impossible to defeat with conventional biological weapons during the first conflict. Their rapid healing and disease resistance had frustrated human medical officers. Throughout the war, Liu intended to turn those advantages into weaknesses. The protein synthesis is complete, reported his assistant, Dr. Sarah Kim. Tests on the simulation models show 97% effectiveness. Liu nodded, though the news brought him no joy. He was a doctor who had sworn to heal, not harm. But he had also seen entire human colonies die from Zephyrian biological weapons. He had watched children suffer and die because their immune systems could not fight alien viruses designed specifically to target human physiology. Never again. Begin production of the countermeasure serum, Liu ordered. Every human world will need supplies before the anniversary date. The anniversary date. Everyone in the Resistance Network knew what that meant. Intelligence suggested the Zephyrians would launch their attack on the 4th anniversary of the peace treaty. The symbolism would please their leadership. The surprise would, they believed, guarantee their victory. They were wrong about the surprise. On Earth, Ambassador Rivera hosted another celebration at the embassy. Zephyrian diplomats mingled with human officials, sharing drinks and stories about the bright future of cooperation. The atmosphere was warm and friendly. Cameras captured images of former enemies laughing together. Rivera moved through the crowd with practiced ease, playing his role perfectly. He complimented Zephyrian achievements, spoke about shared scientific projects, and toasted the lasting peace between their peoples. No one watching would suspect that he knew about every weapon system, every military base, and every planned attack the Zephyrians were preparing. Ambassador Rivera called High Commander Zektar, approaching with a glass of human wine. Another wonderful celebration. Your people certainly know how to honor friendship. We believe in the power of peace, Rivera replied smoothly. After the horrors of war, what else matters but cooperation and trust? Zektar's expression showed what might have been satisfaction. Indeed, trust is so important between our peoples. Without trust, how could we move forward together? Rivera raised his glass. To trust between friends. As they drank, Rivera caught the eye of Colonel Ana Santos across the room. Santos was officially his security chief, responsible for protecting the embassy from terrorist threats. In reality, she coordinated the largest intelligence operation in human history. Santos gave an almost invisible nod. The signal meant that tonight's coded transmissions had been received by sleeper agents throughout Zephyrian space. Men and women who had spent the last 3 years building lives, making friends, and gaining positions of trust, were now ready to act when the time came. The Zephyrians had planted their own spies among humans, of course. But human counterintelligence had identified most of them months ago. They were allowed to operate and report back to their handlers, but the information they gathered was carefully controlled. They saw exactly what humanity wanted them to see, a species still traumatized by war, desperate for peace and completely unprepared for another conflict. Later that evening, after the guests had departed, Rivera stood in his private office reviewing the night's intelligence harvest. Every Zephyrian diplomat carried communication devices. Every device had been discreetly scanned by human technology. Every scan revealed a little more about Zephyrian military preparations. Colonel Santos joined him, carrying her own tablet full of reports. Agent Phoenix reports successful infiltration of the Centauri shipyards, she said. The new dreadnoughts are almost complete. They are planning to move them to forward positions next month. Agent Whisper, still embedded in the Zephyrian command structure. She confirms that Admiral Cashel believes human defenses are limited to pre-war technology. They expect to overwhelm our colonies before we can organize effective resistance. Rivera smiled grimly. Admiral Cashel was about to receive the shock of his life. Back on the Nightingale, Captain Vasquez completed her mission and began the long journey back to human space. Her ship's computers held detailed scans of 17 Zephyrian military facilities. The intelligence would be analyzed, distributed, and used to refine humanity's own preparations. As the ship jumped to hyperspace, Vasquez thought about the irony of their situation. The Zephyrians believed they were deceiving humanity, slowly preparing for a surprise attack while maintaining the facade of peace. They thought humans were naive enough to trust their former enemies completely. They had no idea that humanity had been watching, listening, and preparing from the very beginning. Every Zephyrian plan was known. Every weapon system was catalogued. Every strategic decision was anticipated. The peace accord had indeed been a deception. But the Zephyrians were not the deceivers. They were the deceived. Commander Torres stood on the bridge of the U.S. Defiance, watching her tactical display update with the latest intelligence reports. 2.5 years had passed since the peace treaty signing. The facade was beginning to crack. Zephyrian trading vessels had been detected moving toward human space with suspicious cargo. When questioned, Zephyrian officials claimed they were carrying defensive equipment to protect against unnamed threats in the Outer Rim territories. The explanation satisfied exactly no one, but the diplomatic dance continued. Torres smiled grimly as she reviewed the fleet positions on her screen. Every human warship was officially decommissioned or converted to civilian use. The peace treaty required both sides to reduce their military forces to pre-war levels. On paper, humanity had complied perfectly. In reality, every civilian ship in space carried hidden weapon systems that could be activated within minutes. Every decommissioned warship was actually in perfect fighting condition, disguised to look like scrap metal or merchant vessels. The human fleet was not smaller than before the war. It was 3 times larger. New intelligence packet from Agent Phoenix, reported Lieutenant Chen from the communications station. The Zephyrian attack fleet is moving to final staging positions. Torres nodded and accessed the encrypted file. Agent Phoenix had spent 2 years working as a maintenance technician on Zephyrian military bases. Her position gave her access to ship schedules, fleet movements, and maintenance records for the entire enemy navy. The intelligence was devastating in its completeness. The Zephyrians had built 47 new dreadnoughts, each one larger than anything in their previous fleet. They had developed planet-killing weapons that could sterilize entire worlds from orbit. They had created biological weapons specifically designed to target human DNA patterns, and they believed their preparations were completely secret. Torres forwarded the intelligence to Admiral Chun while opening another file marked Operation Trojan. Peace. The operation's name came from an ancient Earth story about a wooden horse that hid soldiers inside what appeared to be a gift. Humanity had given the Zephyrians a similar gift, the illusion that they were winning a deception game they had never really been playing. On Earth, President Elizabeth Harper sat in her secure briefing room, surrounded by military and intelligence officers. The walls displayed holographic maps showing Zephyrian fleet positions, human defensive installations, and the estimated timeline for the coming attack. Intelligence confirms the Zephyrians will begin their offensive in 72 hours, reported General Morrison, chairman of the Joint Chiefs. They plan to hit 12 major human colonies simultaneously, followed by an assault on Earth itself. Harper studied the projections with calm eyes. She had been preparing for this moment since taking office 18 months ago. Her predecessor had begun the deception, but Harper had perfected it. Under her leadership, humanity had transformed from a barely surviving species to a trap waiting to be sprung. Status of our countermeasures? Harper asked. All systems are green, replied Dr. Liu via holographic projection from his Mars laboratory. The biological countermeasures are deployed and ready. If they use their genetic weapons against us, the response will be immediate and devastating. Harper nodded to Admiral Chun's hologram. Fleet readiness? 100%, Chun replied. Every ship is in position and ready to drop their disguises. The Zephyrians expect to find unprepared colonies with minimal defenses. Instead, they will encounter the largest military force humanity has ever assembled. The meeting continued for another hour, reviewing final preparations and contingency plans. When it ended, Harper remained alone in the briefing room, staring at the tactical displays. In 72 hours, the galaxy would learn what happened when someone tried to deceive humanity twice. Meanwhile, on the Zephyrian homeworld of Kethvar, High Commander Zektar reviewed his own battle plans with complete confidence. His fleet was ready. His new weapons had tested perfectly. His intelligence reports confirmed that human defenses remained pathetically weak. The humans still believed in their precious peace treaty. They still trusted that the Zephyrian Collective would honor their agreements. They had no idea that their former enemies had spent 3 years preparing for total extermination. Zektar's aide, Sub-Commander Yethel, entered the command center carrying updated fleet reports. The final battle groups have reached their staging positions, Yethel reported. All ships report ready status. Weapon systems are charged, and targeting data is confirmed. Excellent, Zektar said, his voice filled with satisfaction. "In 3 days, the human plague will be eliminated forever. The galaxy will thank us for removing this threat." What Zektar did not know was that Subcommander Yethel was not actually Zephyrian. Agent Whisper had assumed that identity 2 years ago, after the real Yethel died in a carefully staged accident. Her biosculpting surgery was so perfect that even medical scanners could not detect her human origins. Every battle plan, every weapon specification, every tactical decision was reported to human intelligence within hours of being made. The Zephyrians were not just walking into a trap. They were being guided into it by their own trusted officers. Back on Earth, Ambassador Rivera prepared for the final diplomatic performance of his career. Tomorrow night's celebration would mark the 3rd anniversary of the peace treaty. Zephyrian diplomats would attend, smiling and making speeches about friendship while their fleets moved into attack. Positions. Rivera would smile back and toast their cooperation while human forces made final preparations to destroy every ship in the Zephyrian Navy. Colonel Santos found Rivera in his office, reviewing the guest list for tomorrow's event. "Every major Zephyrian diplomat will be there," Santos observed, "including their intelligence operatives. They want front-row seats to watch human naivety in action." "Perfect," Rivera said. "Let them watch. Let them report back to their superiors about how trusting and unprepared we are. The better our performance, the greater their shock will be." Santos handed him a datapad containing the latest updates from Agent Whisper. "She confirms the attack will begin during tomorrow night's celebration. They want to deliver the news of human colonies burning, while their diplomats are still pretending to be friends." Rivera read the intelligence report and shook his head in amazement. The Zephyrian leadership actually believed they were master strategists. They thought catching humans during a peace celebration would add psychological impact to their military victory. They had no concept of what they were actually doing. They were not delivering a surprise attack. They were activating a carefully prepared human counter-operation that had been 3 years in the making. In the Outer Rim territories, Captain Vasquez received orders to abandon her medical mission and report for military duty. The Nightingale's disguise was no longer necessary. Within hours, her ship would reveal its true nature, one of the most advanced warships in human space. Similar orders went out across the galaxy. Thousands of supposedly civilian vessels began shedding their false identities. Cargo ships revealed hidden weapon batteries. Medical frigates deployed fighter squadrons. Research vessels uncloaked military-grade sensors and targeting systems. The transformation was carefully coordinated to occur simultaneously across dozens of star systems. By the time Zephyrian intelligence detected the first changes, it would be too late to warn their attack fleets. Dr. Liu made final preparations in his laboratory, checking the biological countermeasure systems one last time. The Zephyrians had developed viruses that could kill humans within hours. Liu's response would kill Zephyrians in minutes. He felt no satisfaction in the knowledge. War was a terrible thing, even when it was necessary. But the Zephyrians had made their choice when they decided to violate the peace treaty. They had chosen deception, betrayal, and attempted genocide. Humanity had simply chosen to be better at all three. As the final hours ticked away, human forces across the galaxy made their last preparations. Soldiers checked weapons that were supposed to not exist. Ships powered up systems that were supposedly dismantled. Scientists activated countermeasures that had been secretly developed and deployed. The Zephyrians believed they were about to deliver a devastating surprise attack against an unprepared enemy. They were about to discover that the only surprise would be their own. Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, watching the tactical display as Zephyrian battle fleets emerged from hyperspace. They appeared exactly where intelligence had predicted. at exactly the time Agent Whisper had reported. 47 dreadnoughts, supported by 300 smaller warships, all bearing down on what they believed were defenseless human colonies. The Zephyrian fleet commanders must have felt confident, as their sensors showed them the expected targets. Mining stations with minimal shields, civilian transports fleeing in panic, a handful of outdated human patrol, ships trying desperately to organize some kind of defense. It was a perfect illusion. All ships report. Ready, announced Commander Torres from the Fleet Coordination Station. Operation Trojan Peace is fully activated. Chun nodded and opened the communication channel to the entire human fleet. Ships that had been disguised as civilian craft for 3 years now revealed their true nature. Cargo haulers unfolded into battleships. Medical frigates deployed fighter wings. Research stations activated weapon systems that dwarfed anything the Zephyrians had ever built. "This is Admiral Chun to all human forces," she broadcast. "The deception ends now. Show them what we really built during these 3 years of peace." Across 12 star systems, the same scene played out simultaneously. Zephyrian fleets, expecting easy targets, instead found themselves facing the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. Not only had human defensive capabilities been hidden, they had been deliberately understated for 3 years, while real preparations proceeded in secret. The first Zephyrian commander to realize something was wrong was Admiral Keshel, leading the assault on the Centauri colonies. His tactical officer reported sensor readings that made no sense. "Sir, I am detecting massive energy signatures from the mining platforms. They appear to be weapons platforms." Keshel moved to the sensor station and studied the data himself. The human mining installations were transforming before his eyes. What had appeared to be simple ore processing facilities were revealing themselves as heavily fortified battle stations. Each one bristled with more firepower than a Zephyrian dreadnought. "Impossible," Keshel muttered. Intelligence reported these colonies were completely undefended. His communication officer interrupted. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the human forces." "Put it through," Keshel ordered. Commander Torres appeared on the main screen. Wearing a human military uniform instead of the civilian clothes she had worn while operating undercover on Zephyrian worlds. "Hello, Admiral Keshel," Torres said with a cold smile. "I believe we have met before. You knew me as Elena Martinez, the trade representative who helped negotiate mineral rights in this system." Keshel's face showed shock and growing understanding. The human civilian he had worked with for 2 years was actually a military officer. Every meeting, every negotiation, every moment of apparent trust had been part of an elaborate intelligence operation. "Did you really think we would not notice your preparations for war?" Torres continued. "Did you believe humans were so naive that we would trust your peace treaty without verification? We have been watching everything you built, everything you planned, everything you prepared. And we have been preparing our own surprise." Keshel cut the transmission and turned to his weapons officer. "Open fire. Destroy those platforms before they can activate their full defensive systems." But as the Zephyrian fleet launched their attack, they discovered their first terrible surprise. The biological weapons they had spent years developing, designed specifically to target human DNA, were not working as intended. In his Mars laboratory, Dr. Liu watched the biological sensors that monitored human forces throughout the combat zone. The Zephyrian bioweapons were triggering exactly as his models had predicted. The alien viruses were designed to attack human nervous systems and cause rapid organ failure. Instead, the viruses were mutating and attacking their creators. "The countermeasure serum is working perfectly," reported Dr. Kim from her station. "The Zephyrian bioweapons are reversing their effects." Their enhanced immune systems are actually accelerating the process. Liu nodded grimly. He had spent 3 years studying Zephyrian biology, learning how their rapid healing and enhanced immunity functioned. Then he had designed viruses that would turn those advantages into fatal weaknesses. The stronger a Zephyrian's natural healing became, the faster the modified viruses would destroy them. The aliens had planned to use biological warfare to eliminate humanity quickly and efficiently. Instead, they were poisoning themselves with their own weapons. Meanwhile, the Zephyrian energy weapons were experiencing equally devastating problems. Targeting systems that had worked perfectly during testing were now malfunctioning catastrophically. Weapon beams that should have struck human ships were missing by enormous margins. Fire control computers were providing completely incorrect targeting data. What the Zephyrians did not know was that their targeting systems had been sabotaged by the very maintenance crews they trusted most. Agent Phoenix and dozens of other human operatives had spent years gaining access to critical systems. Every major ship in the Zephyrian fleet carried hidden modifications that would activate during combat. On Earth, Ambassador Rivera stood before an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Representatives from dozens of species watched in shock as he presented evidence of Zephyrian deception and war preparations. For 3 years, the Zephyrian Collective has claimed to honor the peace treaty while secretly building the largest military force in galactic history, Rivera announced. They have developed illegal weapons of mass destruction. They have planned systematic genocide. And they believed humanity was too naive and trusting to notice. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in surprised voices as Rivera displayed recordings of Zephyrian military planning sessions. Agent Whisper's position in their command structure had provided access to the most sensitive strategic discussions. These recordings show Zephyrian leadership planning the complete extermination of humanity, Rivera continued. They discuss using biological weapons against civilian populations. They plan to destroy every human world, every human colony, every trace of human existence in the galaxy. High Ambassador Zektar, representing the Zephyrian Collective, stood to respond. These recordings are fabricated. Humanity is desperate to justify their own military buildup. Rivera smiled coldly. Military buildup? Is that what you call our response to your betrayal? He activated another display, showing real-time combat footage from the 12-star systems under attack. Let me show you what humanity actually built while you were planning our extinction. The footage showed Zephyrian fleets being systematically destroyed by human forces they had never known existed. Ships disguised as civilian craft revealed themselves as advanced warships. Colonies that appeared defenseless deployed weapons that shattered dreadnoughts with single shots. The Zephyrian surprise attack had become their own destruction. But the most damning evidence came next. Rivera played recordings of Zektar himself, captured during private meetings with his military commanders. The humans are pathetically weak, Zektar's voice echoed through the council chamber. They cling to their peace treaty like frightened children. When we destroy their colonies, they will beg for mercy that we will never grant. The chamber fell silent as the full scope of Zephyrian deception became clear. This had never been about defensive preparations or protection from outside threats. This had been about genocide planned in cold blood while maintaining a facade of friendship. The peace accord was indeed a deception, Rivera said quietly. But the deceiver was not humanity. We offered you genuine peace. We honored our agreements while preparing for the possibility that you would not honor yours. You chose to interpret our mercy as weakness, our desire for peace as naivety. The real shock came with Rivera's final revelation. Did you really believe we did not know? Did you think that a species capable of surviving your first attempt at extermination would be unprepared for your second? We have known about every ship you built, every weapon you developed, every plan you made. We have been ready for this moment since the day we signed your treaty." Back in the combat zones, the Zephyrian fleets were discovering the full extent of their miscalculation. Their surprise attack had walked directly into a trap 3 years in the making. Their most advanced weapons were useless against countermeasures specifically designed to defeat them. Their intelligence about human capabilities had been completely false, fed to them by their own trusted operatives who were actually human agents. Admiral Cashel watched his fleet being methodically destroyed and finally understood the scope of the deception. Humanity had not just been preparing for war during the peace. They had been preparing specifically for this war with these weapons. Against these exact tactics, the humans had played a game that was 3 years longer than the Zephyrians had even realized existed. As his flagship systems failed around him, Cashel sent a final transmission to his homeworld. "We have made a terrible mistake. The humans were never deceived. We were." Admiral Sarah Chun stood in the ruins of what had once been the Zephyrian command ship. The vessel drifted powerless in space, its crew either dead from their own biological weapons or unconscious from system failures. Around the massive dreadnought, the wreckage of the entire Zephyrian attack fleet spread across several light minutes of space. The battle had lasted 6 hours. The war had lasted 6 hours. "Final casualty reports, Admiral," Commander Torres announced from her portable command station. "Zephyrian losses, total fleet destruction, estimated 97% casualties. Human losses, 14 wounded, no deaths, minimal damage to 3 escort vessels." Chun nodded silently. The numbers should have brought satisfaction, but instead she felt only grim necessity. This had not been a battle between equals. This had been the execution of a plan 3 years in the making, carried out with precision that surprised even her. Across 12 star systems, the same scene repeated itself. Zephyrian fleets that had emerged from hyperspace, expecting easy victories, instead found themselves trapped in kill boxes, designed specifically to counter their tactics. Every weapon they carried had been analyzed and defeated. Every strategy they employed had been anticipated and countered. Every advantage they thought they possessed had been turned against them. Dr. Liu arrived at the battlefield, aboard a medical frigate, the same type of ship that had hidden humanity's intelligence operations for 3 years. But now he came openly, wearing his military medical uniform, leading teams to treat wounded Zephyrians with the same care he would give to human patients. "How many survivors?" Liu asked Chen as he prepared to board the command ship. "More than there should be, considering what they tried to do to us," Chen replied. "Their biological weapons backfired completely. Most died from their own viruses. The survivors are suffering from system failures caused by the targeting computer sabotage." Liu gathered his medical team and entered the Zephyrian ship. He found Admiral Cashel in the command center, barely conscious but alive. The alien commander looked up at the human doctor with eyes that showed both pain and understanding. "You knew," Cashel whispered. "From the beginning, you knew everything." Liu began treating the alien's injuries with the same professional care he showed all patients. "We hoped we were wrong. We hoped you would honor the peace treaty. We prepared for war while praying we would never need to use our preparations. The peace accord was real on our side," Liu said firmly. "Every word humanity spoke about cooperation and friendship was genuine. We wanted to build a better galaxy together. You chose a different path." As Liu worked, Cashel struggled to understand how completely his people had been outmaneuvered. "The intelligence reports said you were weak, unprepared. Your intelligence reports told you exactly what we wanted them to say," Liu replied. "Every piece of information your spies gathered was carefully provided to support the illusion that humanity remained vulnerable. Meanwhile, Our agents fed us every detail of your actual plans. On Earth, President Harper addressed the Galactic Council in a session that would reshape interstellar politics forever. Representatives from dozens of species watched as she presented the complete evidence of Zephyrian deception and humanity's response. "Let me be absolutely clear about what happened here," Harper said, her voice carrying across the chamber with quiet authority. "The Zephyrian Collective planned and attempted genocide against the human species. They developed illegal weapons specifically designed to exterminate civilians. They built a massive fleet for the sole purpose of destroying every human world. The evidence was overwhelming. 3 years of recorded conversations, weapon specifications, fleet movements, and battle plans proved that the Zephyrians had never intended to honor the peace treaty. They had used the time to prepare for total war while believing humanity remained defensively minded and unprepared." Ambassador Rivara stood beside Harper, no longer needing to maintain his diplomatic facade. For 3 years, he had smiled and made pleasant conversation with beings who were planning to murder every human in the galaxy. Now the truth was finally revealed. "The question before this council," Harper continued, "is not whether humanity's response was justified. The question is what kind of galaxy we want to build going forward." Ambassador Zektar had been arrested during the night. Communications intercepts proved his personal involvement in planning the attack on civilian targets. His replacement, Subcommander Velther, stood to address the council with obvious fear in his voice. "The collective, we were misled by extremist elements. The people of Zephyrian worlds had no knowledge of these plans." Harper studied the alien representative with cold eyes. "Intelligence confirms that is true. 90% of your population believed the peace treaty was genuine. They supported cooperation with humanity and had no knowledge of their government's real intentions." Relief showed on Velther's face, but Harper was not finished. "However, your military leadership, your intelligence services, and your government were complicit in planning genocide. The Zephyrian Collective as a political entity has forfeited its right to exist." The chamber erupted in surprised voices. Harper raised her hand for silence. "Here are humanity's terms. All Zephyrian military assets will be surrendered or destroyed. All weapons of mass destruction will be dismantled under international supervision. The current government will be dissolved and replaced by a civilian administration subject to galactic oversight." Velther started to protest, but Harper continued. "Furthermore, Zephyrian space will be divided into autonomous regions, each governed independently to prevent future centralized military buildup. War crime tribunals will be established to prosecute those responsible for planning genocide. And if we refuse?" Velther asked. Harper's expression did not change. "Then you will discover what humanity builds when we are not constrained by hopes for peace." The threat was not empty. Every species in the council chamber had seen the combat footage. Humanity had hidden their true military capabilities for 3 years while maintaining the illusion of weakness. If they could accomplish that level of deception while hoping for peace, what could they accomplish when genuinely preparing for war? Back on the battlefield, Dr. Liu finished treating the Zephyrian survivors and prepared to transport them to proper medical facilities. Admiral Keschel, now stable but clearly broken by the scope of his defeat, made one final attempt to understand what had happened. "How long did you know about our plans?" "We suspected from the beginning," Liu answered honestly. "Your negotiation demands during the treaty talks were designed to limit human military capabilities while preserving your own. That suggested you were planning to break the treaty eventually, but you signed anyway. Because we hoped you would prove us wrong," Liu said. "We wanted to believe the peace could be real. We prepared for war while working for peace. That is what humans do when faced with existential threats." Liu paused in his work and looked directly at the defeated alien commander. You made a fundamental error about human nature. You believed that because we wanted peace, we were weak. You thought our desire to avoid war meant we were unprepared for war. You confused mercy with naivety. Cashel closed his eyes. We thought you were like us. We thought you would use peace, as we used it, as a temporary pause to prepare for greater conflict. That was your mistake, Liu said. Humans fight when we must, but we prefer to build. We would have honored the peace treaty forever if you had chosen to honor it as well. Instead, you chose to test whether humanity could survive a second attempt at extinction. And now you know we can. The aftermath of the 6-Hour War reshaped galactic politics permanently. Other species that had been considering their own expansion through military force reconsidered their plans. Humanity had demonstrated not just military capability, but strategic thinking on a level that few civilizations could match. Admiral Chun returned to New Geneva Station 6 months later. The Peace Monument still stood outside her office window, but its meaning had changed. It no longer represented naive hope for cooperation. It represented humanity's genuine desire for peace, backed by the proven capability to defend that peace against any threat. Ambassador Rivera found her there, reviewing reports from the new Zephyrian autonomous regions. The transition to civilian government was proceeding smoothly, aided by the fact that most Zephyrians genuinely preferred peace to war. Any regrets? Rivera asked. Chun considered the question carefully. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that they forced us to reveal our capabilities. But I do not regret being prepared. The galaxy sees us differently now, Rivera observed. Good, Chum replied. For too long, other species saw humanity as lucky survivors who barely escaped extinction. Now they understand that we are survivors by choice, not chance. We adapt, we prepare, and we do not make the same mistake twice. Rivera nodded and looked out at the monument. The peace was real on our side. It still is, Chun said. We still prefer cooperation to conflict. We still want to build rather than destroy. But the galaxy now understands that our preference for peace comes from strength, not weakness. Outside the window, construction began on a new addition to the Peace Monument. This one would commemorate not just the hope for peace, but the willingness to fight for it when necessary.